Good evening. Welcome to Left, Right and Centre. I'm Vishnu Shom. On the programme this evening, China has completed the construction of 36 hardened aircraft shelters, new administrative blocks and a new apron at its Lhunze airbase in Tibet. That's about 40 kilometres north of the McMahon line, the boundary between India and China in Arunachal Pradesh. The construction of the new hardened shelters, which lies about 100 kilometres from the strategic town of Tawang in Arunachal, gives China the option of forward deploying fighter jets and a host of drone systems and reduces the response time needed for the Indian Air Force to respond to any airborne threat. This, in short, is a major headache for Indian defence planners. I'll be joined shortly by two excellent officers, two former Vice Chiefs of the Indian Air Force. They join me live to discuss these developments, also a top Indian diplomat. But in simple terms, the construction of the new hardened shelters at Lhunze from Tawang, about 100 kilometers away, does give China the option of doing a great deal that the Indian Air Force is concerned about. Well, let's talk to you a little bit about the threat that we are now recording and registering. This is in Tibet. This is an area called Lhunze. It's about 40 kilometers away from the boundary between India and China, the McMahon line in Arunachal Pradesh. We'll give you the exact location in a moment from now. But essentially, the Chinese have been really building up their forward air bases. Now, at Lhunze, and this is an image from just a couple of days back, the 17th of October. Zoom in over here. What you'll be able to see are hardened aircraft shelters. There are 36 hardened aircraft shelters at this frontline airbase of the Chinese, just about 100 kilometers from Tawang, 40 odd kilometers from the line of actual control between India and China. So you can actually see the construction which has taken place there on your screen very, very clearly. But let's move to the next image, which will actually show you the speed of construction. And this is an earlier image. This is from the 2nd of April 2025. In fact, we'd broken details of the construction then. And as you can see, there were earthworks which were taking place at that time. Again, we're talking about Lhunze over here. Earthworks which were taking place. And now if we move straight up, you can see that those earthworks have now translated into actual hangars in this particular area. These are hardened aircraft shelters. In other words, these are designed to sustain the impact of missile hits if India were to actually attack. The fact, once again, that this is so close to the boundary is what makes this deeply problematic. The next image that you see gives you a larger perspective of the entire airbase. It now has 36 aircraft shelters, as I pointed out. This is an administrative block which has also been set up. It wasn't there earlier on. There are more hangars that are believed to be under construction in this particular area. So more hangars where I'm pointing at this stage, which have been constructed. There is an expanded apron over here, or a flight line, where eventually the aircraft are going to be positioned. And so it is quite operational now. And with these hardened aircraft shelters, you can have or fully expect fighter aircraft to be deployed over there, unmanned aerial vehicles also to be deployed. In fact, the next image may come as a bit of a surprise, but I can tell you it shouldn't, because at Lhunze, again on the 17th of October, just a couple of days back, in that same airbase, we've got satellite images of CH-4 unmanned aerial vehicles. These are Chinese drones. They operate at altitudes above 16,000 feet. They can be armed. They're important for intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. They could have an armed role as well, not just one, but 3 of these drones being deployed just 40 kilometers from the line of actual control between India and China is a cause of major concern. And I suppose that's why we're really bringing you this report. But if we just move to the next image, which is one of a map, then this is where Lhunze actually is. This is Lhunze over here. It's just about 40 odd kilometers from the line of actual control, about 100 odd kilometers, as I mentioned, from Tawang in Arunachal Pradesh. And all of the red air bases over here are air bases in Tibet, where China is ranged against all of the green air bases, which are the Indian air bases. So let's take a wide shot over here to give you an idea of what is actually the situation as India and China face off against each other. Now, China has got air bases further north, but it is important to note that the air bases that India operates on the plains, whether it's Gorakhpur, Darbhanga, Purnia, Bagdogra, Hashimara, Tezpur, Chabua, Jorhat, and others, right? These are all very important. They've existed for a long time. It was believed that India had an advantage against the Chinese, but through the construction of Lhunze, of Ningchi, of Shigatse, of Damsong, and other air bases, the Chinese now are able to take on what they perceive to be a threat from the Indian Air Force. So you're ranged one against the other. Now, if I was talking just about Lhunze in this report, I can assure you there's a lot more which the Chinese have done. So if we go to the next image, there are in fact 6 air bases, and this is the report we brought you in April that the Chinese have really been working on. The terrain is not easy, that's not stopped them. This is an image of Burang from the 9th of September 2022 when it was under construction. You can see a lot of earthworks taking place, but then on the 23rd of February this year, it's almost completely done. There is a new apron space. There are support buildings which are also constructed. If we move to another couple of images, just to give you an example of the extent of work that the Chinese have been doing on these frontline air bases, we can actually share the next image with you as well, which also shows, and this will be the last image, the Tingri Air Base. This is an image from the 6th of October 2021. The runway wasn't fully operational over there. In fact, it wasn't. You can actually see that the land had been carved out. It had been bulldozed, but there was no runway over there. Compare that with this situation over here, where you've got the runway, the 12th of March 2025. You've actually got an engine test pad, which has been housed over here as well. Over and above that, you've got, so that's the engine test pad. We've zoomed into it. There's a new apron. There's a support building. But the bottom line, as we bring you all of these reports, is this. Inasmuch as India and China are now diplomatic friends in the process of a diplomatic reset, the fact of the matter is that the militaries of India and China continue to be ranged against one another. There is infrastructure which is constructed, it continues to be built up, and what China continues to do is a major concern for the Indian Armed Forces. But let's also bring you a quick reaction. I ran these pictures through the former Air Chief Marshal Dhanoa, and the pictures of Lhunze, and he said that the construction of 36 hardened aircraft shelters at Lhunze clearly indicates that during the next incident between India and China, and let's go to the next page, their tactical fighters and attack helicopters operating in support of their army would be based here. That's why we are doing this report, explaining to you how the balance, in a sense, between India and China is being altered because of these Chinese construction activities. Joining us now, Air Marshal Anil Khosla and Air Marshal Sujit Dharkar. They've both been Vice Chiefs of the Indian Air Force. I'm also joined by Ambassador Punchok Stopdan. Thank you all very much for being with us. In fact, Ambassador Stopdan, let me come to you first, because India and China are in the middle of a massive reset in diplomatic relations. But the reality that you saw in that report of ours exists and it's going nowhere. Therefore, is this essentially a pause that we are seeing, and the reality is something else?
No, I think I would like to differentiate between diplomatic compulsion and military imperatives. You know, nobody is going to just leave your border like that, whether India or China. There are military compulsions and they will continue to do so. We are also going to do that. So there is no quarrel about what the Chinese are doing. It's good that you are trying to alarm the Indian audience, which is good. But I guess that your information is based on the US intelligence system. Okay.
No, it's not US intelligence. These are publicly available satellite images given to credible journalists around the world. And these are the same images, incidentally, that the Indian Air Force refers to as well.
Everybody is doing their own work. There are labs in US intelligence system which trying to portray all these things. We don't know. These are not verified.
No, these are verified.
Hardened aircraft.
These are verified. These are verified images.
Maybe.
These come from Maxar,
I don't know. I
now
have not
called
seen.
Vantor.
I have
So this
not.
is the most
I have
credible
not seen Indian Air
international
Force.
source of satellite imagery that exists. That's why we are doing this, sir.
So if the military imperatives try to sabotage the diplomatic initiatives, that's a different issue. It's happening all over there. But the point is that these things are going simultaneously. It's not that we are lowering the guard at the border. We are also doing. I'm in Leh, and it's Mudh is very close to where I am located, and a lot of things are happening at Neoma, so which is very close to Burang, which is very close to even Tengri. Tengri is little
Yes.
in the west. But the point is that this is not new. From 2022, 2023, this has been going on. But this new thing, which U.S. Private agencies try to put up on the media and try to heighten the
They aren't
situation.
trying to put
that
this
has a
up, sir.
different
I have asked for these images.
Which is good. Which is good. I'm not saying which is bad. Which is good to tell the people what's happening across the border. But it also has certain implications. In either, India-China relationship has not come down to that level that we do away with the border.
Okay.
That's
All right.
not
Okay. Half a
that's not
second.
everybody understands.
Got it. Let me bring in Air Marshal Khosla. Sir, as a soldier, are you satisfied with that response? To me, it seems fairly alarming what China is doing. Is that your concern as well?
Yeah, so China is actually, Vishnu, if you remember, we did a story in April also.
Yes.
That you mentioned in your report also that it is 6 odd bases all along the LAC. The development capability enhancement is taking place. And if you notice, these bases are basically, along all the, I would say, flashpoints or, points of interest. You're starting from the east, Tawang, then Chicken Neck, then coming to, even Tri-Junction with Nepal, that is Dingri, and then further going on to Ladakh area. And they're trying to fill the gaps which were there existent earlier. And not only filling the gaps with these dual-use airfields, as they say that it is for civil and military. And military portion is what concerns us. And not only making these airfields, enhancing their capability in terms of operating surfaces, hardened aircraft protective shelters, AD weapons, storage of fuel and ammunition, command and control center, even underground facilities. So obviously, as a military man, we have to watch out what are these, we have to study them, and we have to see what are the implications, and also be ready with our plans to, defensive as well as offensive plans to deal with these new developments.
Air Marshal Dharkar, the fact that they've got hardened shelters at Lhunze being just 40 odd kilometers away from the LAC in a certain part, doesn't that make this particular airbase of the Chinese particularly vulnerable, even to artillery shelling?
Well, it's an interesting and intriguing concept, actually. To have them so close is an entirely new metric, in my opinion. And one wonders what the operational connotations of these would have been during such planning. But of course, this proximity allows them even more capability very close to the border, or to the actual ability to put men and material there. And the pace at which they can do that, as well as the challenging pace at which they manage this construction, is most amazing, actually.
And so, therefore, Air Marshal Dharkar, what are the implications of this for the Indian Air Force? As I understood it, we had a geographical advantage, the fact that our air bases are at a lower altitude, which meant that our fighter aircraft could take off with a full load of fuel and weapons, whereas the Chinese didn't have this luxury in the past in having to operate from higher altitudes. Is there something that they've done by expanding their air bases which enables them to be able to counter us more effectively than they've done in the past?
While aerodynamics will always have some limitations as a result of the additional elevation, the fact remains that modern aircraft, whether it be manned or unmanned, given longer runways and infrastructure of this nature, actually allow for much faster pace of operations on that side also now. And when you consider that it's happening across a multitude of air bases, newly constructed ones, then overall it is a change in that entire equation.
Air Marshal Khosla, when somebody starts constructing hardened bunkers, and we've seen the construction of hardened bunkers even on the banks of the Pangong Lake of late, surface-to-air missile deployments over there under hardened shelters potentially. is it not a prelude to, or is it not suggesting that China sees a potential conflict, a larger military conflict with India as a real possibility? And the reason I ask this is because they've never developed their airfields at this pace for decades. They could have, they haven't, they're doing it now.
Definitely, Vishnu, it's a indicator that what their mindset is. And you brought out a very good point earlier. Let me take a minute on it.
Yeah.
The utility of forward air bases in the operational scenario these days. If you take Op Sindoor and their chief's talk of knocking down a Pakistani aircraft at 300 kilometers. So with these standoff weapons, both ground to air and air to air, what is happening is the air war is getting pushed backwards. So the forward airfields, their utility, operational utility in actual wartime hostilities when broken out is very limited in the sense anything which gets airborne will be vulnerable. But notwithstanding, they have a lot of potential and a lot of use of these forward air bases during, for a speedy response and a very good, fast build-up. And also major, you pointed out, the Chinese drones operating. So the tactical surveillance capability will go up quite a bit. So these forward air bases have a lot of potential, but in actual war conditions, the utility is reducing because of these standoff weapons. Having said that, you talked about Chinese mindset. So obviously, Chinese mindset, they have not resolved the border issues with us. And once they become militarily strong, their ambitions of 2049, they will start imposing their, whatever their desires onto us. And they're preparing for that gradually. This hardened aircraft shelters was one of their weaknesses in all their forward air bases. There were no protective infrastructure, which they're correcting it now. As a result, this 36 HAS at Lhunze.
Ambassador Stopdan, how would you respond to that? That this is all a calibrated plan by the Chinese, in as much as we want to engage the Chinese diplomatically, economically, and it is inevitable at a certain stage. We need to be wary of what's happening because what we see is very clear.
No, I think we need to understand first what are the Chinese threat perceptions in the Western theater. Number one, I think the PLA has an upper hand on the India border. Not the Communist Party, not President Xi Jinping, not the foreign minister. It's the PLA which has the last word as far as India border is concerned, the Western theater is concerned. Number one, no diplomatic initiative will work unless the PLA gives okay. Number two, they may have some calculations. What would be the possibility of a threat from the Indian side? And I think, to me, my understanding, if my political analysis is correct, I think it's linked with the Tibet issue, where His Holiness Dalai Lama is now 95 years old, I don't know how many years now, and the US has certain policy with regards to Tibet. And I think the way the political development happened in Nepal and also in Ladakh, don't think it is just some tribal demand or something like that. This has been utilized to keep the border on the boil.
Yes.
India-China border, after Prime Minister went to the Shanghai summit, this Nepal development and the Ladakh development happened. And I can see on the ground that there are things which would put India in conflict with China again along the border. Borders are on fire. So there are third forces. Maybe government of India knows or doesn't know, or maybe in league with the outside forces. We don't know. We don't know all these things. So from the Chinese point of view, they take all these contingencies into account and make preparations. I think this is the only possible solution. Otherwise, why would we have a diplomatic thaw and then have the military preparation again? There are certain, gaps somewhere which we don't understand.
No, I agree with you on that, Ambassador. I just think that it's part of the give and take of two powerful nations. I think the point of doing this program is just to highlight once again that in as much as we work towards friendships with China, there are very real security concerns which have not gone away by any means. But I'd like to thank all of you very much for being with us.